live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. It's a Thursday evening, which means you know what it means. It is the fan forum time. And joining me tonight, we have Reza and Cal. Cal's been a while since we've seen you on the channel. And hopefully we'll also be able to bring in Chris, who's having a couple of technical difficulties. But I'm hoping by the end of the session, we will be a four-person team. Which is going to be very exciting. So hopefully, we'll keep trying to bring in Chris, and then we'll hopefully be able to really get stuck in tonight. So first of all, before anything else, a big shout out to BetCoza, who are powering this stream. They are the official betting partners of Forever Sports. And if you would like to win big with BetCoza, then go and check out the description for the link. Go and sign up. You're going to be giving away free bets the entire weekend. And so, but you actually have to have a BetCoza account to be able to receive that free bet. So please go and actually sign up, because there's far too many people who are winning free bets, and we're trying to send you 300 rands worth of free bets, and they don't have an account. And it's all a bit of a waste, isn't it? If you've got a free bet and you don't, well, if you win a free bet and you can't use it because you don't have an account. So chaps, how are we?
Not too bad. Bunged up a bit as it is frigid here in Edinburgh, but I'm alive.
Yeah, you got 3 degrees, we've got 30 degrees. So very different problems, I think, that we're having. Reza, how are you surviving the heat?
Yeah, no, struggling a little bit. Different setup today. Got a little bit of air blowing through the back here, and trying to not sweat so much. But a little bit stress free this weekend. Got a little Lions win under the belt, which we'll talk about. So I'm a happy boy.
Yeah, and for the record, a week ago I did call it. I said the Lions could win.
Okay.
Well,
I don't know about call it. You maybe
go
at
back
best,
and watch. Go back and watch.
well,
and
maybe at best you were just like, oh, let's just fool the hears.
I said they're gonna do it, and they did it. So I'll not take any slander here. I nailed it. And on my Friday show, I also said they were gonna win. I even called it. So at the end of the day, you want predictions, this is the man to speak to. Right, in terms of the show coming up, we're going to do a weekend review. We're going to talk about the URC, the Sharks lost to the Stormers, what it means, the return of RKS Snyman last week, and Apele Fassi signing a new contract today. What is a good idea? Was it not a good idea? We're just talking about that. We're going to be doing a bit of a Six Nations preview. Italy versus Wales, England versus France, Scotland versus Ireland. We're going to be hopefully bringing in a BetCoza betting segment, and that is if we can get Chris on here, and he's going to go through a couple of the bets. If not, we'll still go look at the sports book and look at some of the bets that are out there and what the bookies are saying on some of the main matches. I'm going to wrap up with a Currie Cup preview, which does get underway tomorrow, in fact, and quite a blockbuster Currie Cup weekend to get underway. Let's discuss a little bit about what the Currie Cup means for South African rugby, and just sort of what the future of South African rugby is in terms of bringing the Currie Cup in and stuff. But let's start with the URC, shall we? We had a very interesting weekend. First of all, the Sharks lost to the Stormers. The Stormers pretty much dominated the Sharks and then decided to just stop playing rugby and allow the Sharks to come back. But Carl, we'll go to you first as a Sharks fan. Another loss, and all of a sudden, somebody the other day I think the commentator is saying, this loss means that, top 4 is looking unlikely. I've been saying for a couple of weeks now that top 4 is the least of your worries. I think top 8 could potentially be a bit of a struggle for you guys.
My frustration with the Sharks is just we don't have a second team that can compete at all, and it's quite depressing to watch. We have some very good individuals, but as a team they just don't work.
Well, that's the thing. You can't complain about a lack of personnel, because pound for pound, you look at the Lions squad, for example. Your second team is probably a better player per player team, but they're just not gelling on the park.
It's annoying, and I'm hoping that I didn't know about this whole John Plumtree thing until this morning when you guys were talking about it. So I'm very much hoping he's coming back.
Yeah, although I think the problems will stem a little bit further than just the coaching issues. But Reza, did you get to watch the match? What was your sort of take? As I said, the Stormers looked very comfortable, but then also really did their best to try and throw it away. But at the end of the day, they did wrap up the SA conference, and once again, the best team in South Africa by quite some distance.
Yeah, I think well deserved by the Stormers. I must be honest, when URC started and the Stormers' dominance started to show through, I was surprised, to be honest. I thought it would be a little bit more competitive than this. But credits to them. They seem to have got it together. They've come through the ashes of what was a really dismal financial position not so long ago and gotten it right. And it seems that the Sharks, I said this last week as well, just don't seem to know what to do with their money. and don't seem to know how to implement. So, yeah, I think they've got a lot of work to do. I do think they'll probably get their top 8. I think that they'll comfortably slide in. Maybe a bit of a bogey, especially against fellow SA teams. But yeah, I think we're all at a loss. We're still at a loss as to why they've got such a strong team on paper and can't seem to pull it together.
Yeah, and funny how different the approaches are when you've got the Stormers who are backing youngsters, backing players, fringe players really in South African rugby, the likes of Chiva Diamani discarded by the Lions, Marnie Liebach discarded by the Sharks, a Clayton Vlomikis who had to move from the Cheetahs, Willie Engelberg moved from the Cheetahs, Junior Pakamela, so many players who Evan Roos even who wasn't getting game time, and they've gone and found and identified talent, and they've gone and almost, for me, what's been quite cool, it's almost a little bit like a Bok approach when they've said, right, this is how we want to play. And they've identified players they need to be able to implement that system, and they've gotten it right. Whereas I feel like the Sharks, there's no identity in terms of how we're going to play the game. This is what we want to do. This is our structure. This is our game plan. Right. Who can we get to implement this? They've kind of gone, well, the Lions the Lions' 2 best players were Currie Cup and Vince Tuka. They were really good, so we're going to bring them in. And of course, we need a hooker, so we're going to bring in the Springbok hooker. And
Right.
we need a lock. So who better to get Evan Etzebeth? And you kind of sit there wondering, has there been much of a plan in terms of the profile of player as a player rather than the profile of player in terms of their not even their fame, but the caliber of player rather than the type of player they are. So these are the 2 approaches. I mean, one obviously working, one not working. How do you think the Sharks can find that balance to get that right?
Well, I think they've already started it. Obviously, the big news coming out is the headhunting of John Plumtree, and yeah, I'm interested to see where that came from. Was it a true? Well, let's see how John's been doing lately in his other structures and his other teams over the years gone past, and we like what he's doing. Or is it a nostalgia thing, and they know that he'll fit into the structures, fit into the culture, and then taking it from there. So I think there's, for me, a huge surprise to bring John Black back. Very successful as a Sharks coach, of course. But yeah, like we said, there's currently not a structure in place, and certainly they are bringing players into a structure that they haven't set. So hopefully they bring John in if they get it right, which I believe they have. Correct.
Well, nothing confirmed at this stage, but and also rumors, and there's also couple of rumors about what role, whether he's going to come back as the head coach or whether he's going to come back in the sort of forwards coach role, which I think would probably be a better idea. I still think that Neil Powell can do a job down there. I think he's been in the job for 6 months and he's supposed to be the director of rugby, so I think now he's going to have a bit more sort of say over what things are going to try. But I mean, I look at that forward pack and think that's been really letting them down in the last 2 weeks. They were bullied by Ulster and they didn't manage to pitch up against Stormers either. So I think even just as forwards coach, I think hopefully he could do a lot with a pack which on paper is silly. Sikambozi Noche is on the bench. You got Carly Sadi, who's now apparently leaving to the top 14, but he's been coming off the bench the entire season. Insuka Tunu is coming off the bench. It's a stacked forward pack that is not dominating teams.
Yeah, I guess I still wonder, is his best role to come back as a forwards coach? I know he's done it before for other teams. Of course, he left the Sharks to go to an assistant role. But yeah, it's a lot of personality in one room, a lot of winners in one room, and one has to wonder if you can actually do that. In this day and age, Neil Powell's a proven winner, and so is John Plumtree. Will they be able to work cohesively?
Carl, would you back Plumtree coming into that thing as an assistant, or do you think he has to be the main man?
I mean, he was. I remember him being the head coach, and it was whenever we were, let's say, losing at halftime and clearly not playing well, the team would then come out and play very well after being basically shat on to death at the halftime talk by Plumtree. He did well at the Canes as an assistant coach during that time, and I think at that point he certainly improved how they were playing, and they went on a run for quite a while of being a really, really good side. Still are, but they're struggling a bit more now. It does ring a bit of a, okay, we knee-jerk reaction like Wales, let's get Gatlin back because he'll turn this around. And I'm like, that's working. I don't know. I think My problem with the Sharks at the moment, and it's because of the way the new competitions have been introduced, and with the European Cup, is that we seem to have two squads, and one squad includes all the Springboks and one doesn't. And the problem is they're constantly brought in as a whole thing to play one game and then they're taken out again, and that's not helpful to the other part of the squad at all.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think yeah, again, some people coming back sometimes work, and some people, yeah, they do come back, and things just don't go back as well as they were. Let's move on to some brighter things. The Lions and myself and Reza drank many a happy drink last week Saturday after that victory. And look, I mean, I think the Bulls, it must be said, didn't play particularly well, but I think the Lions played with a bit of belief and a bit of sort of never say die attitude. But I think it was also like it was a team that kind of just threw caution to the wind and said, you know what, we actually don't have anything to lose here. We've been poor for the last couple of weeks. Stuff it. Let's just have a go. And I mean, I thought Tanen and Humble was absolutely terrific. But I think it was a Lions team playing without fear, and they've always been their best when they play without fear. But Reese, what was your sort of take on that game?
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely. Special shout out for Nahamba. I'm sure we'll talk about him plenty today and in the weeks to come. But like you said, there was an identity crisis, I think, very similar to the Sharks happening at the Lions. And Rion mentioned it last week, and I fully agree with him in that they are better playing to their full potential when they're having that free-flowing game. And it's an identity that they've grown over the past couple of years. And of course, it's gone horribly wrong at times where they can put 50 points and also receive 60. But the point being is that it's a model that they've worked with, something that they can build on, and they're never going to be the 13-point team. And I think if they can get some confidence from this, a little bit of excitement, some individual performances as well, to just lift the mood, they can build on this. Definitely, it's a very positive performance against a very strong Bulls side, in my opinion. And yeah, from strength to strength and onwards and upwards.
Yeah, Carl, did you manage to watch the game and watch rugby as it should be played?
I didn't manage to watch that game. I was quite surprised when I saw the result though, but happy for it because it helps the Sharks in a way. So we need all the help we can get at this point.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you
Yeah,
know,
it's a
we have
terrible
to
result for the
oblige.
Bulls.
Yeah, well, I think there again, a bit like the Sharks, you kind of expecting them to be able to get through, but they're just in such a bad run of form, and if they don't, if they once a little about the Sharks, if they need to be a bit cautious because if they do slip up a little bit, then they could be in a bit of trouble. In that top 8. So, yeah, look, obviously that a couple of I think they both basically need 2 more wins, so they can find 2 more wins, and you
Yeah.
kind of think 2 out of I think there's 4 games remaining.
3.
3 games remaining. Yeah, last week was 4. Then we should have been able to. Then we should be able to get the job done. But yeah, I think that if they lose another game, for example, and they're sitting there, both of them staring down at the fact that they've got to win 2 out of the last 2, then I think they could be a bit of trouble. I think they are both going to really benefit from the break, or they have to come off the break. But I think the Sharks not missing their Springboks has been massive. The Bulls, however, only get 2 players back, but hopefully a break will be able to give them a couple of weeks to. Yeah, maybe give some players a chance at the Currie Cup stuff like that, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But
If I could just give a little special shout out to Sabu and Corsi for what has been a really strong return. Yeah, fantastic to see him back in the park, and I'm loving every second of it. And yeah, I think big things coming up for him in the next year.
Yeah, and so good just to see us scoring and stuff again. Interesting enough, we saw today that it was announced that the Springbok squad will be announced on the 8th of August for the World Cup, and he's one player who has technically he's not been dropped. He was never dropped from the box. So is he still part of the World Cup plans, for example? Last year, and the reason I mentioned the fact that he wasn't ever dropped was that last year when they spoke about, we've got players injured and we've got players unavailable, they always mentioned, we don't have Spoo and Corsi, like they don't have Rachius Neyman. So last year he did still seem to be on the Bok radar. Interesting to see if that's changed now with the emergence of Currie Cup and Kane Moody, who are both training with the Box. But I'll tell you what, I like Kane Moody a lot. I like Currie Cup a lot. When Spoon Corsi is playing his best rugby, I think he is the best wing and currently playing in the country. You know, I think that we saw that performance he put in that semi-final back in 2019 against Wales, and when he's on song, I think there are a few players who keep him out of that side. So yeah, interesting to see how he goes in the next couple of months. But I think also a really cool template for how to deal with a situation like that. You know, a player who is struggling needs to take time away, and instead of sort of punishing him for it and stuff, just say what, well, let's take the time, let's actually get it right and come back. And he looks like he's in a much better headspace. And yeah, I think that's us. I think it's a nice. We've seen it a couple of times with a couple of players. Ben Stokes as well. Players who've actually felt the pressure, walked away, and come back a lot better. And I think this has been another sort of success story about that. So hopefully we'll see a bit more of that into sort of the future and stuff like that. We're busy trying to bring in Chris, although I'm not sure if we can hear him. I think things are still a little bit sketchy on the technological side. Chris, I don't know if you can hear us. I don't think we can hear you, unfortunately. No, it's not looking good. Okay, well, we'll keep trying with this. But in the meantime, we're going to have a look at the sportsbook for the weekend, the BetCoza Sportsbook, who, as I said, are our betting partners. And maybe Chris can send us a couple of bets that he's maybe looking out for on our group and stuff like that, and we can share what. Because I'm going to tell you what, at the end of the day, if you want to lose money, you can listen to what I'm going to do. So don't listen to what I'm going to do. Although if you had backed the Lions last week, like I did, you could have. I actually would have loved to have known what those odds were if we had gone back a week and looked at them. So I'm now seeing a bit of audio here from Chris. So let's see if we can actually try and bring him in. No, I'm just hearing. It sounds like he's on an airplane. Right, but in terms of the sportsbook for the weekend, let's have a look, shall we? And look at some of the games and stuff like that. Right, and just so this is what the tomorrow looks like. For example, as I said, we've got some Currie Cup action happening, and tomorrow afternoon, which is going to be quite cool. We're taking on the Cheetahs. France, they've been named the team, by the way, for Springbok fans that want to look out at and see what is happening with France Stain's fitness. So that's, I think, very worth watching tomorrow, literally purely from a is France Stain playing good rugby and is he fit type of perspective.
Yes,
as you can see there, pretty even in terms of what the bookies are reckoning. Free State at 1.8, Griquas at 1.95, which I think is a bit harsh considering that you've got the Cheetahs who are about to go and play in a Challenge Cup last 16 game, and the Griquas who haven't played a basic game of rugby since the Currie Cup final last year. So yeah, I think it's I'm interested to see that Griquas are being backed so much. But a couple of early games in the Super Rugby Pacific as well. For Saturday,
I'll be up for
that. So Chiefs versus Highlanders there. Highlanders obviously being back to do the business. Rebels versus Waratahs. Waratahs being favoured despite being the away side. I don't know how much Super Rugby you guys have been watching. I've watched a couple of clips, but just very quickly, maybe before we move on, what was the take on the Ardie Sevier incident? Because I thought that was quite an interesting. It's been quite an interesting debate. What are we saying about that?
Oh, I'll let Cal have a go at this one first.
like, I get it. I get why they've done what they've done. I think it's a bit PC. I think it's a bit too politically correct. Like, is a player really going to get upset by seeing that being done to him?
Is it so much about the player or about the audience?
What kids are seeing, yeah. I mean, obviously, World Rugby has to look at it from a holistic thing, but I mean, I don't know. Like you say, you can't do it during a game, but it's not like. I mean, they did take away that exact kind of thing from the haka.
Yeah. So that's my biggest thing as well. That people are like, oh, but it's in the haka, and people are like, but it's not anymore. Like they have said.
And in that sense, yes, I get it.
I feel like perhaps the punishment is slightly unnecessary. I think a lot of these things can be dealt with at not necessarily behind closed doors, but in a bit more of a listen. We've had a talk. We've given him an educational program, but to punish a guy for a reactionary thing like that is a bit harsh. I do think it can't be allowed. But yeah, that's my initial thoughts. I really don't think it needs to be much more than that. And it's like you said, it's been taken out of the haka. It's very clear to everyone that you're not allowed to do something like that, a show of extreme violence or threats or anything of the sort. And therefore, it's part and parcel of the game. I'm sure Artie's not moaning about it too much. And if he's not moaning, neither should we.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think he's got a one match ban, so I don't think it's anything too hectic. I also think it's 100% to do with the type of player. I mean, if the scrawny little scrum off does it to you, you're probably like meh. But if Artie Severe does it to you,
No.
I would
No.
be panicking. I must admit.
I disagree. I think Faf gets a 5-game ban for sure.
No, we're talking about New Zealand scrum off. No. So Springboks are a whole different thing. We know what would happen if a Springbok did that. He wouldn't be playing in the World Cup.
Oh yeah. Oh well.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't have been happy though watching RCV doing. Yeah, probably just a bit of a pressure.
Yeah.
So I would sort of just jump in that. So those are the games tomorrow. A couple of Six Nations under 20 action, and then Saturday, Super Saturday, as I'm calling it. There's a couple of Premiership games. Exeter Chiefs versus the Falcons there. Then we've got Super Rugby, the Fijian Drua versus Crusaders, who got off to a terrible start, but now looked a little bit back to their best. Hurricanes up against Blues. The Brumbies up against the Reds there, and the final game of the weekend is Western Force against Moana Pacifica. We've then got Italy versus Wales, the first game of the Six Nations. We'll talk about the Six Nations in a little bit, but Italy, interestingly enough, not being backed as the favourites. I think they're definitely the favourites walking into this, but not too much in it, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I think if you go look at the handicap, it'll be pretty low. Yeah, and the handicap sitting there at... there, 1.5. So not much in the handicap there, to be honest. And then we've got back to Saturday. We've got England versus France. France being backed. England are at home. Have made a couple of changes. We'll talk through those changes as well. And in a little bit. And then two Currie Cup matches: Sharks versus Griffins. As you can imagine, Sharks being back to do the business there. Western Province versus Lions, not much in it either, and I think that's probably also a lot to do with the fact that teams haven't come out. We've got no idea what sort of teams we're going to see in the Currie Cup, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And then one game on Sunday rather, Scotland versus Ireland. I tell you what, I might take a cheeky punt on Scotland, to be honest, whether it's an outright winner or just the handicap at 7.5. I think that this game could be closer. I think that Ireland have been playing so well. But a little bit like France is sort of like, winning streaks are there to come to an end. So I do think that there could be a potential for a bit of a slip up there. And we're going to talk a bit more now when we go through it. But so that's kind of the book that we're looking at there. Another Currie Cup game there, Pumas versus Bulls. Interesting that Pumas aren't really back despite being the defending Currie Cup champions. So again, I think that'll all change tomorrow when we start to see some of the teams. But let's talk about the Six Nations, shall we? Because it's quite an interesting weekend ahead. And let's sort of go through the games. Italy versus Wales. Now, it's a very interesting Welsh side being picked. A lot of big names being left out. No Dan Biggar, no Alan Jones in the 23. No Flav being named on the bench, for example. So it's quite a strange Welsh side. But it's weird. I was saying before we went on the air, I said it's a weird Welsh side in that I like almost every single player in the starting 15 and the 23, and yet the actual side doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence. But yeah, I mean, Carl, what do you reckon? Italy versus Wales? Is this going to be Italy 2-0 in the Six Nations against Wales in 2 years?
I mean, I really hope so, but my worry is that I think Capuzzo's injured, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's why the bookies are backing Wales. I think he's that important to their side. Monty Ioane, is he back? No, I don't think so.
No, still not playing at the moment.
Thing is, if Wales lose a fly half, then Italy win, I reckon. But at the same time, I really hope Italy win. It'd be great if Italy win, because I think Wales do need even more of a push to actually sort out rugby in their country. I think it was what's his name? The ex-scrum off, Matt Phillips, or what's his name? Phillips.
Yeah.
He was talking about basically how 4 of the 5 club sides are bottom of the URC. How just that the national side is basically stone dead last. and that serious change needs to happen. And yes, it's done to a degree, but I don't think they're going to see the benefits of that for a while. But then again, them bringing in their youngsters and actually start, like, I think Alan Wynne-Jones not being there is probably a good thing. I also think Bigger being out is probably a good thing as well, although they do need a reserve fly half. It'll be an interesting game. I reckon it'll be close.
Yeah, I think this Welsh. Look, I think Dan Bigger and Owen Jones will be involved in the World Cup. I think that's all pretty straightforward. So I think this is now Warren Gatland going, right. I've got 2 games left. I actually have to see where my squad is. I actually have to see what I've got going into this World Cup. I never backed not necessarily the appointment of Warren Gatland, but I think that to fire Wayne Pivac and the timing and stuff like that, I think that just took them out of the World Cup contention that automatically. And I think with all the behind-the-scenes action as well, hasn't already helped. They finally have signed a couple of resolutions, so it does look like they might be sort of moving into a bit of a better future. But Rees, Italy have looked very. I mean, it's a really exciting Italian side to get behind. Some really cool players to watch, and it's a City side you kind of want to always do well.
Yeah. Is this Italy at home or
Italy at
at
home?
Wales?
Yeah, Italy at
Yeah.
home.
At home. Okay, so that changes my perspective a little bit. I was actually banking on a Wales win this weekend if it was at home, but I think it's the margins are that tight that a bit of a home crowd for Italy seals the deal for them. Yeah, for me, I'm so glad to see Alan Wynne-Jones out of that team. Frankly, I don't think he should be making it to a World Cup. I think it's actually ridiculous that he's been part of that conversation.
Hey, man's got to try to get to his 200 caps, dude. Don't be an enemy of progress.
Well, we had a very similar problem with John Smith for a long time. Where there was this milestone sort of barrier that everyone was rooting for, at arguably at the cost of a couple of performances. And now take that times it by 10, and you've got Alan Wynne-Jones. So, yeah, I don't know. I wonder. I just wonder. There's pandering to the public, and then there's this.
My problem with him still being there is like he will put in good performances, and I think he did last weekend. I think he was like one of the actual good players, but he's costing Wales in the form of they're not producing or they're not getting experience for their new locks who actually they don't have many, so they really need to get them experience.
I think that it's been a long time since I've looked at newcomers to national teams and God, that is an absolutely horrid performance, truly shitty.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that kind of plays into the people go, yeah, he's not playing terribly, but he's averaging, let's call it a 5.5, 6.5 every game out of 10. And for me, like you said, you could have a new guy roll into the setup and pull off those performances relatively consistently. Which makes me wonder what warrants his spot at that age. Mornay Steyn came and did it for us in the Lions series at his age, and
please don't.
but I mean, he turned in 8, 9 out of 10 performances, and I think that's what you need if you're going to keep someone in for that long. The same thing with the France Steyn, etc., etc. Mike Phillips, by the way, is who you were talking about earlier.
That's it, yeah.
He was also an example of a player who was around a hell of a long time, but turning out crazy performances. So, yeah, that's the basis for me and my prejudice, let's call it, against one of the Joneses. But yeah, Italy win.
Right, there we go. So,
well, I had the same problem about 10 years ago-ish with England's persistence with Mike Tyndall when he was about 400 years old. And I was like, for God's sake, stop.
Right, so Reese, you're going Italy win. I'm going Italy win. Carl, you're going Italy or Wales win?
Italy.
Right, we're all backing Italy. Right, next game is England versus France. Right. This English side has, I thought against Italy looked like they'd taken maybe half a step forward. And then against Wales, despite the victory, rolled up the good old Bok game plan and played one of the most dire games of rugby we've seen in a long time. Owen Farrell's been dropped. Marcus Fitt's been backed next to Ollie Lawrence as well. So, proper hard-hitting centre. It is Genge will captain the side for the first time. No Courtney Lord, which I think is obviously quite a big loss. As an England fan, is there a chance? Do you back yourselves, or do you think this is going to be pretty straightforward for the current Six Nations champions?
I honestly think this is the best chance we have to win, with Smith at 10 and Lawrence at 12. I think playing defensively against a team that breaks you down for fun is going to be a shit idea. And we're going to have to try and match them in speed and match them in attacking flair. It's how Scotland played against them. Ireland smoked them towards the end. And I think playing conservatively against them would be a terrible idea.
Well, okay, fair enough. Reese, what do you reckon? Conservative or just stick to what you know?
I would, yeah. I think if they were able to pull off a Bok type brick wall approach, sure. Whether they have that in the locker, probably not. So, yeah, I would agree that the expansive approach is probably the correct way. Fire with fire, and see if you can get on top of them. I still am not entirely sure that France believe they are as good as they're playing. And I think if you can get on top of them early, you're probably in with a good chance. So held to leather from the first blow of the whistle, and they got a chance.
Right, fair enough. So, Cal, where do you think the game is won and lost?
To be honest, I think my key matchup will be Smith versus Intermac, because Intermac had a shite game against it, Ireland.
I've
He
been
was
very
not good.
underwhelmed by him, to be honest, this Six
Yeah.
Nations.
I'm so surprised that Jalibert has not started. I'm so surprised that and this is why I think if England can essentially rattle him and Smith can get firing through that channel with Lawrence, I think England have a very good shout at winning this game. If they don't, they're probably going to get screwed. But I think England aren't playing badly when they're expansive. I think Smith coming in is a risk, but it's something we need. I'd rather risk something and maybe lose, but in a very good performance, than try be very boring and get screwed.
Yeah, fair enough. I think maybe a bit of like a Lions approach. If nothing to lose, everything to gain. Go and throw the ball around, see what happens. And in the last game, Scotland versus versus Ireland. I think this could be a bit of a banana peel for Ireland. I think Ireland are actually quietly quite nervous, because I think the Scotland side, whilst they haven't, they're no longer, they lost to France. But to tell you what, that second half performance, they outplayed France. It's the Scottish side that you love and you hate, because I think it's the Scottish side that when they turn up, and they can turn up, you sit there going, shit, these guys can play. But they've also got moments where you're like, this is like watching an amateur side. So yeah, it's an interesting game. I think that's I think that if the Scotland pack can try and match the Irish pack, I do think that if the two backlines have to start running at each other and have to start getting involved, I do think that Finn Russell, Johnny Sexton, as we sort of expect to see, I think a lot can come down to which of those two really pitch up. I think the centre pairing is going to be a very interesting matchup. I think that's the exciting thing. I've looked at almost every single matchup in the entire sort of 23 or 15, and it excites me. But Reese, is this just going to be a walkover? Well, it's a pretty straightforward game for the current number ones, or do you think Scotland do pose a genuine threat to them?
No, not at all. I think that genuinely Scotland can come away with this. I do think that they need to have the correct game plan in place. And having looked at a lot of the punditry that's going around at the moment, and I would agree with most of it, is that I think this game is actually lost and won in the forwards. I really do believe the guys that get the set piece dominance, especially, will be the ones who come away with it, because really exciting backlines for both. But yeah, you've got to win those set pieces, and Scotland have been doing that really well, and Ireland have got the return of Tad Furlong, I believe, which is a scary prospect for their scrums. And yeah, it's going to be a very interesting battle, because I think Scotland are sitting best in line-out success and steals in the tournament. Yeah, I think up front is where it's won and lost, and let those backlines easily run free if you're able to assert that dominance.
Yeah, fair enough, Cal. Agree with that?
Yes, I would love Scotland to win. I really want them to, because I don't think if they don't win, I think Ireland get the Grand Slam. But I'm skeptical that they will, just because I think Ireland are just that good. Even not playing to their best, they managed to sweep aside France. and Scotland have a habit of shooting themselves in the foot, like they tried to do against France. And France very much helped them by shooting themselves in the foot. But again, still let it slide. I'm definitely wanting Scotland to win, but I don't know how optimistic I am about it.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, I think a lot of Scottish fans will be like that. They'll be like, well, the thing is, they'll go into that match knowing that they can win, but that's very different to actually winning, you know. And some people say, oh, any team can win in the day, and I mean, no, it's not every team can win in the day. But I look at that side, and I do think that Scottish side have what it takes if they can string together a decent passage of play to get over the line. But I think I agree with Reza. I think it comes down to the packs, and there's always been a little bit of worry about the Scottish pack and whether it can really sort of get onto the front foot and dominate proceedings and stuff. Just before we're going to go into our Betco's recommended bets, Chris has sent us a couple of nice bets for us to have a look at, and so we'll go through that very shortly. But before we do that, chaps, the Currie Cup starts this weekend, and Carl, I know you're over in the UK and you guys don't have nice things like the Currie Cup and Varsity Cup and things, but the Currie Cup's become a very hot topic in terms of its relevance within SA Rugby. Now, I did a live show on Tuesday, and I said there's two ways you can look at it. You can go the Jake White way, which is the Currie Cup is now watered down. It means nothing. We should retire it. We should just stop the competition. We should shelve it, and basically, you know, mount it in the hallmarks of SA Rugby and not have it anymore. And I think the other attitude is John Dobson, and he said, look, at the end of the day, it is what it is. You know, rugby has progressed. Things are new competitions, and he said, but the Currie Cup is still very important to us as a franchise, as a union. So, for example, he will be actually coaching the side himself. Well, their coaching staff will be doing the duties, not passing off to a different coaching staff, and they're going to use it to really develop depth, to give players that haven't been playing a chance, and to try and use it to really become a feeder system. Reese, I mean, we've grown up watching the Currie Cup. You know, loved watching the Currie, some great Currie Cups over the years, some great finals, watched some great players. Where are you with the Currie Cup? Do you think that it has lost all of its magic, or is there still something there that's valuable to SA Rugby?
It's really sad because I don't want to see it go as a fan, and I'm pretty sure everyone around the world is probably with you on that, because as rugby supporters, we are very nostalgic. But I wonder how much the viewer actually means to those involved in the Currie Cup. So John Dobson, like you said, it was talking about the internal structures and how important and pivotal it is to them to develop not only coaches, players, and so on. And it doesn't seem to me that he's too concerned about the viewership. And so my worry is that I would hate for them to drag this on and for it to become a financial burden. For no reason. However, if it's not becoming a financial burden, hell, if it even breaks even, I would say keep it around. But is that sustainable? I'm not entirely sure. But if it's got some value to the unions, sure. Yeah, but as long as it doesn't impact on the other areas. But as a product, I think it's dead in the water. But we've got such a big player base. As South Africans, we have the largest player base of professional rugby players in the world. You have to wonder, what does that do for the game? Where do these players go? Do we see another exodus of young talents at an even lower grassroots level than we already are seeing?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think my frustration, I agree. I think the magic of the Currie Cup's been lost. But I don't think it's as simple as say, well, you know, the on Springboks playing, therefore it's a shit competition. And I'm having a lot of debates about it, because I'm saying that because my biggest thing, I said, you look at the Varsity Cup and how successful the Varsity Cup is, and how many people go to the Varsity Cup, and look what it's doing for SA Rugby. And everybody turns around and says, no, but people that watch the Varsity Cup don't watch it for the rugby. They just, you know, it's a party and it's a good time. And yes, I think there's definitely a certain amount of that, of, you know, just, well, let's go watch rugby and drink beer and stuff like that. But I look at the amount of people watching school rugby. I mean, super sports schools exist almost primarily based on the school rugby following. I look at the Varsity Cup, I look at 40,000 people into Loftus watching Stormers versus Bulls, and think that there's such a hunger for live sport and rugby in this country that surely we can still get the Currie Cup right, even without maybe the best players playing. I mean, there are still plenty of good players out. I mean, we've seen the Pumas go and win. I just think that there's just nobody that's really championing the Currie Cup. There's no innovation with the Currie Cup. There's no sort of how do we reinvigorate this competition? How do we what can we add to the competition, and how do we take it to the people? At the moment, it's just like this, like the standard template. Everybody plays everybody home and away. You'll play at your normal stadiums. There's the fixtures. Play, and it's just there's no innovation. There's no sort of.
I think that ties into the fact that the product itself is not poor, but it's being overtaken by other things. And I think it's not just a problem with rugby products, it's a problem with global sports in general, that you and I as consumers, and generally speaking, we consume more than one sport. And right now, I can think of 5 different things that I want to watch this weekend. I'm not even going to be able to get to all of them. And of all of those, Currie Cup is nowhere on that list. And so not only are they going to be competing against other rugby things, they're competing against other worldwide products that are just escalating at a rate that they simply just can't keep up with. We are never going to get their investment at that level with such little returns. And so with that in mind, I do think that it's possibly dead in the water. If it's got value, it's going to have to be sort of like a Craven Week type vibe. It's a development program for younger talent, and it should be labeled as such. Yeah, that's where my head's at. It's really sad, but yeah, Varsity Cup was a jolt. I'd go watch a Varsity Cup game tomorrow.
And Carl, yourself, what I mean, I know that, as I said, I mean, I don't know how many Currie Cup games stuff I get you watched during your time here, but the idea of it, but to be fair, I think also maybe tying into this, the Pro D2 is a very successful competition in France, and I think has laid the platform for how the top 14 has become the best league in the world. Even the second tier from the Premiership, the Championship is a pretty reasonable product. So I think it can be done. I just think you need to be a bit creative about it. But Carl, so any sort of any thoughts on the Currie Cup and how to sort of reinvigorate it to make it relevant?
I mean, I agree. It's a really sad kind of state of affairs. And when I lived out there, I would religiously watch the Currie Cup. It was my second favorite competition outside of Super Rugby, and for me, I feel like South Africa leaving Super Rugby had a huge effect on it.
Well, the scheduling obviously made a massive
yeah, the
impact,
scheduling changed. And I mean, I used to go to so many games, the Sharks games in the Currie Cup, and I loved it. I remember the final where we played the Bulls, and that was an amazing game. We did also have the problem back then of, Springboks would come back just for the finals.
Yeah.
And the whole team changed, and it was like, okay, but fine. You'd still see most of the tournament with your pretty decent second team players. Like I remember watching Louis Ludic. I remember watching like Charles McLeod, and when Rory Cockett was there.
Well, throwback Thursday, huh?
Look, there were those Currie Cup like stalwarts, those players who were on the bench during Super Rugby that could do a job, and then got to Currie Cup, and they used to remember how people used to talk about the fact that they're a Currie Cup standard player. There were certain players. I mean, I think somebody like.
But that wasn't bad.
No, it wasn't. It was just like, and it was almost like.
Back then, that was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and even like the concept, like somebody like like Ryan Konkowski, who was like a Sharks hero, was really good in the Super Rugby. It was like a star in the Currie Cup, but never sort of translated that onto sort of like the Springbok and the national team. So I think that there was a lot of that back in the day. I just think that we've just got to do something different. Pro D2 play games on a Thursday. I think there's so many. At the end of the day, I think for me, it just kind of sounds like they're just sort of throwing it out there because they have to. SA Rugby, and there's no sort of like. I mean, I'd love to know, who's the tournament committee? Is there a tournament committee? Is there a group of people who sit around a table in, just September, October, and they sit there going, right, what are we going to do for the Currie Cup? Or is it just really just, okay, well, somebody generates some fixtures. Let's tell the unions it's happening, and Super Sport share the things. Please try and, I just get the feeling that's kind of what's happening at the moment, that there's no real planning and sort of.
There's also just such a congested calendar. Where do you want them to fit it in?
But I also feel like they're in a bit of a bind because the Currie Cup is the oldest rugby competition in the world.
Yeah, so you can't.
And that's one hell of a thing to either just be like, right, it's done, or to shelve it for a bit of time. Like it's a really difficult place to be because it used to be so good, and yes, it's dipped off. But how in the current setup do they then revitalize it? And it's a huge ask, and it might take a couple of years of it feeling like it's worthless before they can figure out how to get it back.
What I think also an interesting point is we talk about the big player database. I think that we've got a very interesting. I think the next World Cup cycle is going to be very interesting because I think it's in next year. I think that we'll start to actually get money from being part of the EPCR and stuff like that. And if these unions can start retaining more and more players, and we maybe see a much smaller player exodus, which is wishful thinking, then all of a sudden, the quality of the URC goes up, but the quality of the Currie Cup inevitably goes up as well. Because you've then, if your second tier players you aren't playing for, you aren't necessarily your swimmer players are still playing Currie Cup or whatever, then obviously that's also a major stepping stone. But yeah, I think at the moment we've got so many different competitions and there just doesn't seem to be much thought about how to treat all of them individually and make them all sort of work.
I must also just be honest. Sorry, Carl.
Yeah, I got you.
One thing that pops into my mind, I'm a little, as a Lions fan, for instance, I hate knowing that there are two different teams. There was one thing when we had Currie Cup and we were like, okay, yeah, that's great. This is our Currie Cup team. We all know the Boks are coming back, but inevitably it's still one team. This is completely different. There's not a single Boks going to step on the field for this Currie Cup side.
Well, that's going to be interesting because Jake White, who's obviously still like the Currie Cup thing, he was naming very strong sides last year in the Currie Cup, and many people saying that he got the balance wrong because he was sometimes splitting, and you had Ulrich Lowe playing a Currie Cup game, you had Mornay Stain who was like the, so I think it'll be interesting to see the approach they took because the Lions last year said, nah, Currie Cup's our juniors, and we had under 20 and we got absolutely hammered. It was embarrassing. But I think also even John Dobson has said that I think he wants to almost create like just one massive squad and say, right, this is how we're going to split. So I think that's also going to be I think maybe there's a bit of onus on unions to say, listen, we understand that you got your URC commit stuff like that, but if you guys are seeing value in the Currie Cup and this is going to be important for your development, you have to come to the party and you've got to make sure that you are putting decent sides out, playing good rugby.
You're asking too much of a Sharks team that's too worried about getting top 8. I just don't think they have the capacity to think that far ahead when the immediate problem is simply promoting your competition that's the premier one at the moment. So you can't be doing dismally in that and then sending Oaks back to Currie Cup Schutztown. Excuse the language, but yeah.
What do you think about the idea of making the Currie Cup a more international competition?
Well, they've done that with the second division. So they've introduced something called the Nzanzi Challenge, and they brought in, so it was quite controversial. They brought in a team from Israel, and then they canned the team from Israel and brought in a team from Mexico instead. So there's a Mexican team, a Spanish team, a Kenyan team, I think. Kenyan team? Yeah.
Yeah, because I think doing that would.
They are in the second division though of the Currie Cup.
Yeah, too low down.
I think they could do it with the Currie Cup itself, but get teams from like second division Argentina, and well, they won't be able to get an Italy side because Italy only have 2 and they're both in the URC.
Yeah.
But I think that at least might help keep it afloat for at least a little bit until they know what to do with it.
Yeah,
I tell you what, we would watch Japanese sides, Tongan sides, Fijian sides coming into the Currie Cup. I would love that. I'd watch that all day long.
It'd be so creative.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, we just need something. We just need something to change. We can't just keep throwing up the same thing and expecting things to just fix themselves. So maybe Rugby, please sort it out. She's just trying a bit of innovation or something.
And you can see like with Super Rugby at the moment and seeing Fijian Drua and was it Moana Pacifica, whose kit I have to get because it's so cool. I know they're not going to win many games, but God, they're entertaining to watch. And I'll wake up at 3 a.m. to watch them get smashed by the Crusaders, but who cares? Because it's a really interesting and entertaining game.
Oh, well, good to know someone's still watching Super Rugby.
Yeah, I certainly.
I've never stopped
while I work, but there's Test cricket tomorrow, so Super Rugby's taking a back seat. But yeah, we do want to sort of wrap up. So I think at the end of the day, our message is to SRAB, just do something a bit different with the Currie Cup and try and sort it out because we all miss it. Yeah. But just finishing off, our Bet Koza bets that Chris has sent through for you guys to hopefully go and win. So once again, first of all, obviously we cannot guarantee any of this. You put your money there, you've done it yourself, and if you win, we'll take the credit. If you lose, it wasn't us, it wasn't our fault. But so for tomorrow, Chris is saying that he's liking Chiefs versus Highlanders at over 54.5 points. That's at 1.45 odds. And for the Rebels versus the Waratahs, he's saying Rebels at 14.5 for an over-under alternative two-way at 1.3. Has a good look, and he said if you double those up, it'll be at 1.91. So that's to start off your weekend tomorrow. You can get that. And then Saturday, he is saying back extra Chiefs to win. So clear result there. Over 42.5 between the Fijian Drua and the Crusaders, and over 44.5 Italy versus Wales, which I think is also a very good shot. I think that will be a very high-scoring game. And the treble odds on that is 2.84. So go and lock those in, give it a shot, give it and see. And yeah, next week we'll review and see if anybody won some money or lost some money. But people, thank you very much for jumping in. There's a couple of comments I wanted to get through, but yeah, it was just a very jam-packed.
Just before we end off, guys, next week, special guest Anton Taylor. Yeah, looking forward to that. Should be good. Little Varsity Cup legend and commentated quite a few Super Rugby games. So yeah, good to get a nice guest on there.
Yeah, and hopefully that, and we'll make sure that we sort Chris's issues. So we will be telling you what his bets are in person next week as well. So as always, a big shout out to BetCoza for powering the show and powering the channel. In terms of watch-alongs this weekend, we'll be alive for Six Nations on Saturday with myself. Might even do a couple of Currie Cup games over the weekend. Let's see what the weekend holds for us. But so, yeah, as I said, we'll post the schedule tomorrow, and you'll see all the streams as they come out tomorrow. Please do come join myself and Reza for the StevieP show. Hopefully, it should be good fun. We had a lot of fun last week with BK, who did have to down half a beer on the stream, and then he buckled. In fact, next week when he's back on, he has to down a full beer because he backed the Bulls to win, and the Lions did the business. So that's going to be in next week's feature. But tomorrow, yeah, going to be some really cool things. We'll be talking about some of the weekend predictions. We're going to be doing quick fire predictions, some results, some weird and wonderful sporting stories, and just generally having a good time to get you started for the weekend. So it should be fun. Gents, thanks for jumping on, and to everybody else, we will see you guys very soon.